Good evening. Welcome to the Green Local School District Board of Education meeting for the month of May. Mrs. Snowberger, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Herdlick?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Mrs. Finelli?
Here.
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Here.
Thank you. If you'd all please rise and join me, we'll have a little moment of silence for the tragedy of down in Santa Fe, Texas, and those that lost their lives to what I consider to be a cowardly act, and we'll follow that with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd all join me for just a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move right into the honors and recognition. Mr. Miller.
All right, we're going to start with our Students of the Month. So at this time, can I please have Mr. Schenk come forward for Greenwood?
And Mr. Lyons did let me know that any of you, and this is for the remainder of the meeting, the microphone on the podium is not working, but the handheld is working, so we'll just have to use that. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing Phoebe Smith. She is the daughter of Mark and Kristen Smith, and then also part of her family, she has Toodles, her dog, and Spike, her fish. Does Spike have a spike? No. All right. Her favorite things to do are soccer and help cook, and favorite color is orange. Favorite food is sushi, which she just had tonight, right? Okay. And favorite games, Old Maid. Favorite thing about school is Writer's Workshop. And so she feels that she is special because she is kind, thoughtful, and talented, and we would all agree with that. And when she grows up, she wants to be a?
Veterinarian.
Great. All right. Mrs. Wilkie, who's in attendance, had this to say about her. Phoebe is a joy to have in class. She comes to school with a big smile on her face every day. She is kind to her peers, models positive behavior, and works to the best of her ability. I could not ask for a better student. So great job, Phoebe. If you could please put your hands together for Phoebe Smith.
All right, great job. Next up, we have Mrs. Maraschino for Green Primary.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to introduce Green Primary School Student of the Month, Adam Spencer Beck. And I was just complimenting on how handsome he looks tonight. He does not dress that way every day for school. This is a special occasion though, huh? All right, so Adam is joined tonight by his parents, Justin and Cammie, and also his two teachers, Dr. Diorio and Mrs. D. Dominichez. A little bit about Adam. Adam wants to finish GPS strong and looks forward to joining the intermediate school. This summer, he wants to learn to wake surf. When he's done with high school, he wants to serve a mission and attend BYU. So big plans as a young third grader. His favorite subject is math, and he enjoys that because he likes his teacher and he feels that he is good at math. He is also an excellent reader and finished recently the 4th Harry Potter book. Adam loves recess time at GPS as well. Who doesn't, right, Adam? He likes to get outside and play with his friends and have a break from his schoolwork. Outside of school, Adam plays all different sports. He's been snow skiing since he was 3 and is fast down the mountain. He also plays the piano and is a Cub Scout. An interesting fact about Adam: Adam has an extra bone in each of his feet, and this makes him very, very flexible. Daily, he climbs up and down the door jambs to touch the ceiling. Adam, I was hoping maybe you could stick around and show us that after this meeting. What do you think? You're probably too dressed up for that. The best advice given to Adam every day, Adam is told to remember who you are, set a good example, and smile. And he's great at all 3 of those. And I would agree, every time I see Adam throughout the hallways, he has that great smile on his face. His teachers, what they have to say about Adam is that Adam enters each day with a smile, an eagerness to learn, and a willingness to help others. He is responsible and conscientious in completing his assignments, as well as caring and trustworthy when working or playing with others. He leads by example with a quiet, calm manner that others are naturally drawn to follow and model. His friends shared these examples of such leadership. He helped me up when I got hurt outside, and he grabbed a pencil for me when I forgot it. That's what a good friend does. We are so lucky that Adam is such a positive and unforgettable part of our classroom team this year. So Adam, congratulations. We've been lucky to have you, and good luck with those goals that you set.
All right, congratulations, Adam. And now, Mr. Booth, Green Intermediate School.
Am I impressed? You're looking mighty sharp tonight with me standing here. Wyatt Westover is our 6th grade student of the month this month at GIS. And he is here tonight with his parents, Aaron and Teresa. And we're just so proud of him. There's so many great things that I'm going to share with you. First of all, he loves math. It's challenging, but that's okay for him. He likes it still. He also is a science nut, and he loves that Mrs. Anderson puts together fun activities in class. And also, he likes social studies because his dad has a love for history, and that's something that he also cherishes as well. So outside of school, listen to this. He's a sports guy. Here's what you'll find. In the winter, you'll find him on the basketball court because he plays center, and he's been doing that since 2nd grade. In the spring, you'll find him on the baseball field. He is a pitcher and a first baseman, and he started that in 2nd grade as well in t-ball. And then also in the fall, you'll find him on the football field. He's a nose tackle and an offensive tackle, and he's been doing football since, again, 1st grade. So outside, his free time activities, interesting. He loves to do yard work for a neighbor, really kind of a give back kind of a guy. He also likes to ride his 4-wheelers around. His future plans and goals include becoming a Marine, possibly going into the Navy or Air Force, or if that doesn't work out, he'd like to be a veterinarian. When I asked him about his heroes, he included this. Dad's always been his hero. He loves to do motor cars and build cars with him. In fact, they're working on a 1997 Dodge truck, correct? Very, very cool. He also gives Grandma a highlight or a shout out because she's a retired teacher and helps him with his math. So I asked him something special about you. Well, I was expecting a different answer to this, but this is what he said. Really, really awesome. I am special because I accept people for who they are and not what they look like. So what a great heart we have in Wyatt. In fact, his teacher wants to, or says these words about him as well. Mr. Manfort says, Wyatt is very attentive in class. I appreciate his responsible behaviors. I can count on Wyatt to stay on task, to put his best effort into his work, and Wyatt has a great personality and a tremendous confidence. These qualities are the reason for my nomination of Student of the Month. So please help me in recognizing Wyatt Westover, our Student of the Month at GIS.
All right, nice work, Wyatt. Next up, we have Green Middle School. Mrs. Seals.
Good evening. Unfortunately, our Student of the Month, Faith Schrock, is unable to make it, but we still wanted to honor her. Faith is a member of the 8th grade class. She is the daughter of Gary and Lori Schrock and has a sister, Autumn, at GIS. Faith is very active in soccer, playing on both club team and rec team in Green. She's looking forward to playing soccer at Green High School next year. And Faith also enjoys spending time riding and showing her horses. Faith has a goal of attending Ohio State University to study medicine. She has an interest in pediatrics and becoming an emergency room physician. Her team of teachers state that Faith is hardworking, diligent, and kind. She lives her life with integrity and sets an example for her fellow peers as a model 8th grade student. We love having her in our classroom daily. Congratulations, and hopefully she'll be able to watch this on TV.
All right, and Mrs. Brown, Green High School. Oh, I thought you had theme music.
That's their walk-up music.
Asked if they planned it. Or if it was an ensemble outfit, no?
Might have been.
It might have been. All right. Our two seniors of the month are, first of all, is Camden Divers. Camden is the daughter of Carrie and David and the sister of Kaylee and Kendall. She has thoroughly enjoyed her time with GHS, especially in the Performing Arts Department, as a member of musical theater, freshman, and select choirs and ensemble. She enjoyed being a member of the GHS varsity dance team, women's tennis team, Girls of Green, National Honor Society, Key Club, and being a Bulldog ambassador. Camden will pursue a bachelor's degree in commercial music with a voice principal and music business emphasis at Belmont University. So congratulations to Camden. Our next senior of the month is Logan Rockich, and he is the son of Adam and Tara, and older brother to Luke and Levi. He has been a part of ensemble, musical theater, select choir, FCS, NHS, cross country, and track. He's also very involved with his church as a part of the worship band, student leadership team, and as a middle school ministry intern. He will be attending Cedarville University to major in biblical studies with a double minor in music technology and worship. So congratulations to Logan. Thank you.
All right, congratulations to all of our students of the month, and thank you, family and friends, for your support. Obviously, they got here for a reason, and that's because of what you guys do to support them. Next up, we're going to segue to our spotlight on staff, and if I could please have the following individuals come forward. Diana Props. Donna Curl. And Cindy Sarver. All right, and for those of you that do not know, we do a spotlight on staff every single month. We get everything from parents, community members, students, and peers that write in and submit names. These three were selected this month, so I'm going to start and read a little bit of why Diana was selected. So her entry said that she's an extremely hard worker, very dependable, and very organized. She can always be counted on to do whatever it takes to help out the students in the building, the staff, or anyone that needs help in general. She always does her best to keep things running as smooth as humanly possible. Her positive approach and her attention to detail make a real difference in everything that's done in the building. She was instrumental with the smooth transition of a new office team member at Greenwood, and they are extremely fortunate to get to work with her each and every day. So thank you, Diana, for what you do. And Donna Curl, she joined our district in 2015 as a payroll coordinator. She's worked previously at the Portage County ESC and had a background in finance. Since she's arrived in Greene, she's been an integral part of streamlining our payroll processes and helping implement new technology to all of our employees. She's always found working hard at her desk, is always courteous and kind to everyone. We're extremely lucky to have Donna as part of the Treasurer's Office staff and part of the Greene Local Schools family. So we really appreciate everything you do, Donna. Thank you very much. And Cindy Sarver, she is a first grade teacher at Greene Primary School. She's a kind-hearted teacher that makes every single child feel special in her classroom by creating a safe, engaging learning environment where kids love to spend their time. She's an incredibly hard worker who never gives up on any of her students. Her dedication to helping them succeed, regardless of their ability or background, is unmatched. She cares about students as if they were her own, and it shines through if you go in her classroom. Every single one of her students know just how much they are loved and appreciated. They're aware that they have a teacher who will work tirelessly to make sure they feel safe, welcomed, loved, cared for, but most of all that they're going to grow and learn by leaps and bounds. She's a problem solver and leader in the building, and so many people look up to her, including myself. She is phenomenal. She actually had one of my students, and just thank you so much, Cindy, for the job you do. All right, so one more round of applause for our Spotlight on Staff and Students of the Month. And next up, we're going to recognize our National Merit finalists, and I believe they are very busy doing other things. I think volunteer coaching. There's all kinds of events this time of year. So Denton Cohen and Nicole Stout, I don't think you are here, but I am going to speak about these two outstanding students. Denton and Nicole have been named finalists in the 2018 National Merit Scholarship Program, which represents less than 1% of U.S. high school students nationwide. Each of them had to submit a detailed scholarship application, information about their academic record, their participation in school and community activities, leadership abilities, employment, and honors and awards received. They must also write an essay, and they have to have a qualifying SAT score. I'm happy to say that Denton is going to be attending American University in Washington, D.C., and Nicole will attend the University of Miami, Ohio. So please help me congratulate them for their outstanding accomplishment. And now for our PTA Outstanding Educators, can I please have Mrs. Brown start us off?
Green High School's outstanding educator for this year is Mrs. Megan Miller. She's a member of our social studies department. She's also the advisor for Girls of Green, which organizes Winter Formal and all of our blood drives at Green High School. She's also the junior class advisor, so I'm not sure where she's at tonight, but she might be recovering from prom and after prom this weekend. And 3 o'clock in the morning looks a little different at our age than the high schoolers that had fun at the prom. She also is our volunteer organizer for our veterans program at Green High School. She volunteers all of her time to put together that program each and every year. Based on the nominations she received, some of the comments that were made is that Mrs. Miller has an amazing connection with the students at Green High School. She goes the extra mile to understand her students and work with them individually. She is patient and kind. Students feel as though that they can approach her, and Mrs. Miller has a special way of motivating her students to work hard and do well. So congratulations, Megan Miller. We're very happy to have you as a staff member at Green High School.
And next up, Mrs. Seals. And Mike Murphy, come on down.
I told Mr. Murphy all these people were here for just him tonight. All right, Mike is a member of our 7th grade science team, and he is joined here by his wife, Ann, who is also a member of our 7th grade science team. And before I start, she just wanted to let you know that she's no longer doing your sub-plans. But congratulations on being our Outstanding Educator of the Year. You come to school every day and do a great job. We are always hopeful that throughout the course of the year that the teachers will feel valued, important, and appreciated. Mike, you work tirelessly on behalf of the students and serve an incredibly important role in their lives. Your impact is profound and reaches the students you see year after year, which is why they always come back asking for you to visit you or come running up to your room. Your unwavering focus on improving the experiences, outcomes, and opportunities for students has not gone unnoticed. So on behalf of the PTA, your students, their families, and all of us at GMS, we thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Congratulations, Mike and Megan. And Mr. Booth, please come forward. And Miranda, come on down.
It's a pleasure for me to stand next to one of our outstanding educators at GIS. In fact, Miranda Esterly has been at GIS for 3 years, and she is a 6th grade intervention specialist. And for those of you who are not education-minded, an intervention specialist is one of our staff members that works with our most at-risk students. And she's just a fabulous, fabulous person. And so, in fact, she's a graduate of Kent State University and is just finishing up her master's this July. So she's only been with us for 3 years, finishing up her master's, and then also just completed the RESA program, which was a lot of work, I hear. So glad I'm not having to do that again. So, but she has been working extremely hard in her first 3 years. So Miranda's being recognized today because she is able to uncover specific learning gaps of her students. She diagnoses their learning needs, she sets goals for improvement, and then she monitors their progress towards those goals, and then she makes adjustments along the way. She has a passion to see her students succeed. She advocates for their needs, she helps them reach high levels, and the best thing is she accepts no excuses when supporting them in reaching those high levels. A little bit of background about Miranda. She always knew she wanted to be a teacher, but thought she might want to teach younger kids until she did her student teaching at the middle school level. She began her teaching career with us by asking for a few days off. Well, I was like, well, thinking that she might be a bit of a slacker, we soon realized that she had a reason. Actually, she was getting married and starting a new job all in the same week, and she was at a little bit of a stressful time in her life. So it was Labor Day weekend, and she again returned back to school on Monday. Both the wedding and her week off were well planned, so we knew that she was dedicated to both. Miranda enjoys biking, hiking, and camping with her husband, Andy, and their third member of their family, Lazarus, which is a German Shepherd. A teacher, made this comment about Miranda. Miranda goes above and beyond to form relationships with all of her students. She motivates them and stretches them to their fullest potential. She truly cares about her students and is invested in them not only academically, but personally. Her high standards will benefit them for the rest of their school careers. I did have the opportunity to interview a couple of her students, and they said these wonderful words, because you know what, it comes right down to the students, and here's what they said. They said she's very nice, she explains things clearly, she's caring, outgoing, and she pushes us hard. And Alexi, another one of your students, says that she is always willing to help, she's never judging, and she will take as many questions as I ask. And she's very, very patient. So again, Miranda, we are so glad that you are part of our team, and we'd like to recognize her as our outstanding educator at GIS.
All right, congratulations. And next up, we have Mrs. Maraschino. Nope, Mr. Schenk. All right, a little bit of a curveball there. Can we have Christy Harrelson come forward as well?
Christy Harrelson is well deserving of the PTA Teacher of the Year award. I worked with Mrs. Harrelson for several years now. And two main characteristics stand out when I think about her. One, she's extremely patient with all of her students. And two, she treats all of her students in her classroom as if they were hers. As a principal, but more importantly as a parent with two small children, I know how it puts me at ease knowing that our children are in great hands and treating them, again, like they're yours. And I greatly appreciate it. So thank you. And then one of her parents had this to say about her. I was so excited to find out that Christy was going to be teaching my younger son this year after teaching my older son last year. I learned so much about the school, the community, and being part of my children's education from Christy. Because of Christy's warm and caring nature, I have felt comfortable volunteering in the school and in the classroom, and she taught me so much about how to help my children learn. Last year, I was so nervous about an IEP meeting at the school, but when Christy walked in the room and she put her hand on my shoulder, it meant the world to me and to know that she was on my side. I have complete faith that when my kids are in her care, she is loving them and taking care of them as if they were her own. Christy is always given to others both at the school and in the community, and we are so blessed to have her in our lives. To me, she deserves to know how popular she is with all of our families she has touched. Thank you, Christy. You are a wonderful person and a very special teacher to the kids and to the parents and to our staff. And again, very well deserved. If you could please put your hands together for Christy.
All right, thank you. Congratulations to all the recipients, and just some wonderful stories. As we move on towards the approval of the agenda, those who didn't want to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you can collect your things and kind of make your way to the back, and we'll give you a few minutes to before we start up with the second half.
Some of your friends in the audience. Over to the left. Oh, that's nice.
And to the right. And signing in, because Mama don't play.
Is that Connie? That's Connie. Did you see Connie out there?
Yep.
Yay, Connie.
And as they finish up, we'll move on with the agenda as we have here on item 4 for the approval of the agenda. We do have one. It's not really anything to add or take off the agenda. Just on item 7, we're going to flip-flop A and B. So we'll go with the permanent improvement update first, followed by the 5-year forecast presentation. We will consider that just an addendum to the agenda since it's not the same as printed. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda with addendum items as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Herdlick?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We have no need for executive session at this time. Item number 6, if there's any visitors who want to comment on just the agenda as it has become official, want to just identify yourself, you can come up. Otherwise, there'll be time throughout a couple times in the remainder of the program that you can make comments, just general public comments. Seeing none, we'll move forward with that. And item 7 with the superintendent treasurer report, permanent improvement.
All right. Mr. Jackson, if you could come forward and provide us with the PI update.
Hello? Well, thanks for welcoming back again. It's that time of the year in May where we do our annual permanent improvement update. And I know we've got a lot of things to get to, so I'll get started right away. I think people that have been paying attention and looking at the permanent improvement presentations over the last several years recognize this page. I think it serves as a reminder that when we talk about permanent improvement, a lot of folks are under the understand that we have $3 million to spend. And even my own family says, Wendell, how come you can't get all these things fixed with the $3 million you have? Well, one of the things that I always talk about is there's a certain amount of fixed costs, 63%. And then once we keep the emergency carryover 10%, I'm left, or the district's left, with $817,000 a year to basically get all the things that are done, such as repairs, the projects, provide maintenance supplies and equipment throughout the district for the entire year. So let's see what some of the things that money got us. One of the main pieces that we did last year was over the summer, we took this field, which was, I think, installed in summer of 2008. We got 9 seasons out of, and this is what it looks like today. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's an absolutely beautiful field that gets a ton of use, from gym classes to obviously the athletes that play on it, community use on the weekend. I don't think there's ever a time where you can't go by there and someone's not utilizing it. You may recall the tennis courts that we put in a few years back. We were having some issues with the cars parking in that, I'm going to call it the pathway, but basically it's where our student athletes and our fans watch the tennis matches. Also during events, stadium events, people have to get from the shared lot between the middle school and intermediate school and travel up. It's a nice place for them to walk up from the middle school, intermediate school area. Having said that, it was unprotected. So we installed safety bollards as some kind of a barricade. Well, certainly it's got bollards every 10 feet, and certainly you can walk in between there. It keeps cars from going into the cart path. Obviously, a lot of people that come back there that are there for practice or for the games understand that that is not a paved lot. The stadium lot is basically comprised of cinder and stone, and every year, at least for the last 2 years, we've regraded it. That occurs every spring. We've also done plenty of sidewalk replacement. A couple examples. This is outside of door 3 at the high school in front of the auditorium. I wish I had taken a couple of pictures of the before, but I'm actually ashamed I would have been ashamed to show them. And that is outside door 4 at the middle school east entrance. Also, too, we had added electric signage. There's an example of what we used to have, which was basically a one-message letter hanging board. You would manually put the lettering up and manually take it down and basically just have 1 or 2 messages. Now, this is what has replaced it. Quite a difference. And the amount of information that you can push through on these signs is unbelievable. I won't speak for the principals, but I think they've all mastered it, and the messages change, I believe, every 5 seconds. You'd be surprised on what you could learn just driving past or waiting to drop your kids off. What we're looking at there is Greenwood Early Learning Center, but obviously they were done and the work was performed at each and every building. We also had a boys' team room that was in need of a serious upgrade. You can see there from looking from the south of what the boys' team room used to look like. Obviously the lockers are already taken out, but lockers were off the hinges, wouldn't close, beat up pretty good, as you can imagine, after 20 years of use. And that's what it looks like now. I would add, too, that this summer we are looking at the girls' team room as well, and we'll be performing some of the same things that we did with the boys' team room. We're always thinking about security and safety. We added some outdoor security lighting in the district, and you're going to see an example here of the high school parent pickup and drop-off area. That's pretty telling there. If you take a look, that one, these were both done at, I believe, 3 in the morning. one before the lighting, one after the lighting, obviously. And those pictures were taken from new security cameras that we put in that cover the north end of the high school as well. Here's another angle, before and after. We also did some updates to our what we called our snack shop, which is now called the Bulldog Cafe. For a few years now, our kids have been asking for different items, things that they want, and we've come to realize that kids' tastes are changing, and this was something that was needed, where we sell caffeinated products, breakfast, and it's really made the kids happy. They get what they want, and it's improved our food service bottom line at the high school. If we had any baseball players in here, I think they'd all recall being ankle deep in muck in the early part of the years out in the outfield. Our varsity baseball field has been in that same location since I was in school here, which was a considerable time ago. And over the years, its drainage, if it ever had any, has totally dissipated. So here we have an example of what we did in the outfield. And I think that if you were to talk to any of the folks, the youth organizations or the varsity and JV baseball teams that use that field, it's been a 180-degree difference. It's very, very well done by the company, and just extremely good performance on the field this year. We've also had ADA doors replaced, added, and repaired. And one example of that was at the door number 3, which is the entrance to the auditorium. And you can see there, this young lady is hitting one of our newly installed buttons that open the door automatically. Our school bus fleet is extremely antiquated. I think we get a lot of mileage out of our buses simply because we've got 2 talented individuals in our garage that keep us running. And honestly, I think we've ridden their backs for quite some time, and probably have not ordered the amount of school buses that we've needed because they've been able to do such a good job. But this last year, we've started in earnest replacing the school bus fleet. And we had 4, and here is an example of a special needs bus, as you can see in the back. That's a chairlift for wheelchairs. And we'll be getting several of those over the next year or so. We also had electronic identification access installed at the middle school, or updated at the middle school. So now, again, I think you've seen me use this picture before. That's at the intermediate school, but it's the same premise. It's at the middle school. So strategically, we have areas where teachers can get in, not with a mechanical key any longer, but with a badge. This past year, we've had security camera upgrades at both Greenwood Early Learning Center, the middle school, and at the high school. We had a lot of work done at the middle school. We now have 280 security cameras district-wide. As I said, we're always thinking about security and safety, and it's been a very popular topic here lately, but we've been talking about it for as long as I've been here. And one of the things that we had targeted was our visitor management system. Our security committee's been talking about the need for a visitor management system for a year now, and we actually selected a product with Raptor Technologies. And a couple of things that I think are the most important pieces. Raptor Technologies, or the Raptor Visitor Management System, will do a lot of things. But some of the most important pieces are the instant screening of every visitor against registered sex offender databases. It has efficient and reliable tracking of visitors in your building, and we decided to go ahead and get a jump on this so we could have it installed and implemented for the new school year. Those that watched attended the last PI priority meeting recognize this list. This is the list from May 2017, and it's exactly as I presented last year. And all the projects that are in red are completed, as you can see. The Tier 1 projects, all of them were completed, from the stadium turf to school buses to the boys' team room renovation to some of the safety upgrades. And you can see Tier 2 and Tier 3, some were done, some had a much larger price tag and thus moved down the priority list. I don't think there's ever a day, certainly a couple of days, that Mrs. Snowberger and Mr. Miller and I don't talk about our priority lists and for the permanent improvement projects. And I think every time we talk, I think the priority lists change. You know, we're constantly looking at the needs, what are the current conditions, and most importantly, what are our available resources. Here is the May 2018 priority list. As you can see, we've got middle school and intermediate school lot upgrades. As soon as we break from the school year, you will see a mobilization of equipment come out to the middle school, intermediate school parking lots, and we will begin work, and it's scheduled to be completed, weather permitting, August 10th. We've talked a lot about security and safety upgrades, which I'm not going to get into detail on, but those are always on the table. I believe for the board's consideration, we have a total of 11 school buses up for vote tonight. Those of you who have kids at the intermediate school certainly understand we have some bathrooms that are in some serious need of upgrades. That's already scheduled for this summer. And then also the girls' team room renovation is something that is already planned this summer. You can see, I'm not going to go through the rest of the tiers, but you can see some of those. We plan these out. These things are done in order. There is a plan. We just don't say, oh, this is broken today, although that happens and we're going to fix it. We have a plan, whether it's roofs, whether it's parking lots, we have the plan to do that. So that concludes the presentation. If there's anybody that has any questions, I'm ready for them.
Wendell, number one, thank you for sharing all that with us, and it seems like you truly do a lot with limited funding. You talked about the tiers and the priority lists and the larger price tag items. Obviously, there's some, roofs and parking lots that exceed the 800,000, I think, that you mentioned that's outside of the fixed cost. Could you go just a little bit into how you maybe plan for that over a 3 or 4 year period and the set aside for that,
Actually,
and how that affects you?
Actually, I believe we have a 10-year plan that started more than a few years ago. Anytime you're dealing with asphalt, you have to deal with what you're trying to do is you're trying to maintain it to get as much life as you possibly can out of that asphalt. At one point in time, when we started this program, we realized that as far as square footage, the high school was probably our biggest asset when coming to parking lots. So instead of, and I know a lot of people didn't understand this at the time, instead of attacking the intermediate school, middle school parking lot, which was beyond repair, we chose to spend some money on repairing the assets that we had, basically to give that patient a little longer life versus addressing the intermediate school, middle school patient, which had passed on and needed replaced. So now we've come to the part of the plan where we are able to replace the intermediate school, middle school lot, and then you'll see, if I could go back, you can see under the tier 2, you can see the GHS lot reseal. That's part of that plan again. It seems like we just did that 2 or 3 years ago, but you have to constantly maintain it and seal it, or else you're going to get in a situation where you're going to have to replace it. Eventually you will, but you're trying to get as much life out as you can Same thing with the roofs. I think you find that, we attacked the roof in a systematic way. We didn't have the money to spend $1 million on a roof. So we tackled it sometimes $500,000 at a time, $250,000 at a time, to the point now where we have the roof, and it's brand new.
Thanks.
I have a real quick question. I just wanted to ask, Wendell, you said we got 9 seasons out of the stadium turf.
Yes.
The original turf, that was, the guarantee was for how long?
The warranty was 8 years. That's
8 years.
general in the industry. It's been my experience that you're going to get anywhere from 8 to 10 years on a field. Obviously, there's a lot of variables involved in that. When you have as much play on a field as we do, I'm going to guess that starts time clicking, the clock ticking a little bit faster than normal.
So we actually got a year's extra out of that field.
You got a
generally.
year more than the warranty.
And then the new turf, should be another 8 to 10 years?
Yes, yes. It has an 8-year warranty as well.
And I think I'd just like to piggyback real quick on what Mr. Cohen said, just so people are clear. When you see the price tag for the field turf, obviously, it's a significant amount of money. But I think we need to make clear that we don't just play football on that field. We play soccer on that field. We play lacrosse on that field. So that field is used all year long. And if we didn't have the turf that we have there, we would have to have separate fields and maintain separate fields for all of those sports. So when you start looking at that, you start looking at the maintenance of grass and maintenance of particularly, 3 different fields. From an economic perspective, the price tag begins to look a little bit more reasonable there. And I want to thank, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Musey, who isn't here with us, he's our athletic director, and Mr. Miller, who took a significant amount of time looking at the different vendors, traveling to the different stadiums across the state, looking at field turfs, and particularly Ohio State, where the vendor that we used also provides the turf for Ohio State, who, let's face it, could afford to put new turf in for every game if that's what they desired to do. So we felt confident going with that, and I think it will serve its purpose. And, we have to have a safe turf for our students to play on. I would not accept anything less. So I thank you guys again for the time that you took with that project.
Well, I might add that turf is not a luxury anymore for us. It's a necessity. I mean, the days when 40 years ago where you just played football on the field and it was a muddy mess by October, those days are gone. And again, you mentioned all the sports teams. We're forgetting about gym classes that are on there all the time, the community that's on there all the time. We really do get the best bang for our buck with that field. And I can't imagine having a grass field out there. I think those days are long
Absolutely.
gone.
Thank you.
I just had one question. Continuing with the turf, with that first field that we had, I know we had some issues early on where money wasn't there back in, the trying to get that new levy passed in 11. We were obviously making cuts other than actually spending money on things. So the maintenance program for the field was lax there for probably the first 4 years maybe of the field, 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
Where the money just wasn't there to spend. In the position we're in now, and now with the new turf, what is your feeling if we obviously keep this in a maintenance program moving forward? If we got 9 years out of a turf that maybe we only maintained for the last half of that life trying to stretch it, do you feel that we would have more time with this turf if we keep that maintenance program on, or is it the life is just the life?
Well, it's a possibility. I'm going to go back a little bit. It's not as if the field wasn't maintained. We didn't have a company that was doing it. We were doing it ourselves. We have the equipment to do it. But there's been a focus on it now, certainly, that we have the new field. And it's a tricky situation to say, boy, this is going to last a certain amount of time. My expectation that it would last the warranty period, and anything that we have over that is gravy.
Thanks.
And part of it, I don't know, maybe if you can touch on with the concussions and the safety aspect, and you're looking at the rubber pellets, the impact testing that takes place that gives us information, obviously, before we have student athletes or community participating on our field.
Sure, yeah, there's the GMAX testing that we did periodically. And I think your question is, when those GMAX tests start to come back and they're starting to get unacceptable and you have to continue to repair those, I think that's what you're talking about, and certainly we had some of those issues. But I think Field Turf is a very good partner for us, that's the vendor we ultimately had chosen, and those are the folks that had ultimately put it in the first time. I will tell you that they put in roughly 600 fields a year compared to the other competitors, which were fine competitors, I must say. But they put in roughly 60 and then 30 fields a year. And I think for me and for those that were involved in the decision, there was safety in numbers there.
Thank you, Wendell. Mrs. Snowberg.
Okay, moving on. Have to wait for it to come up. Just forgotten about me.
I don't know if they can hear you.
Oh, there we go. Okay, we're ready now. Okay. As we've talked about in the past, the 5-year forecast is updated monthly in my office, and it's reviewed by the Board of Education twice a year. After the board reviews the forecast, it's submitted to the Ohio Department of Education. So you can go on there tomorrow into the Ohio Department of Education's website, and there's a search box at the very top. All you have to do is type in the word 5-year forecast, and you can search for any district in Ohio if they've submitted it already or not. But ours will be up there tomorrow. When you look at the 5-year forecast, obviously I couldn't put that on this screen. You wouldn't be able to see it. It probably has 60 lines to it. But it's basically broken down into 3 parts. The revenue section at the top, the expenditures are in the middle, and the bottom half is all the cash balances, and it shows you those totals with and without encumbrances, and with the renewable tax levies in the year that they fall off there. So the revenue itself is that top section. It's got 3 main parts to it. The real estate collection, which is your property tax bills. There's 3 sections of that in various places on that line items. There's the state aid, which you've heard me call it the foundation payment. It's the money that we get from the state. And then lastly is what they call other revenue. We're going to start with the real estate collection. Like I said, there's 3 sections to that. There's the residential commercial property tax, which is basically homeowners' bills and businesses' bills, the public utility tax, and lastly, your property tax allocation. So when we start with the residential and commercial, because it's the largest, it actually makes up 51% of all the district's revenue sources. This is based on the 3 levies that are used for our day-to-day operations of the district, and they're the only 3 allowable to be reported in this 5-year forecast. We have a continuing 24.99 mil levy. In 1976, all levies for every district were converted to the continuing levy, and that was as a school district, that was your base. So if you'd never passed another levy, we would always have this 24.99 mils for a collection. Our second levy is our $4.8 million emergency levy. Emergency levies are based on dollars and not mills, so that actually collects $4.8 million per year for the district. And that levy is set to expire in 2021. And the last levy we have inside the forecast is our $4.1 million emergency levy, and that levy is set to expire at the end of next calendar year in 2019. There are other levies in the district that are for very specific purposes, and therefore they're not inside this forecast. We have a bond levy that was passed for the high school construction, and we have a permanent improvement levy for capital improvements that you just heard from Mr. Jackson. Our second collection of real estate is public utility. Normally we don't talk much about this line because it's only 2% of the total revenue. But I believe if and when we receive the Nexus pipeline, it will be placed inside of this line item, so that's why we brought it up today. Typically, this line only covers the tax from the gas and the electric companies. I know there's been a lot of talk about the pipeline, and I can tell you that Mr. Miller and I and Mr. Campbell as well went with us. We've talked to a lot of people. We went to talk to a professor at Cleveland State who now has a published document about pipelines. We've had several meetings with the Stark County COG. They actually hired an attorney just to cover districts that have a pipeline in them as well. I want to clear up a couple of things that I've heard around the rumor mill and tell you what I do know about the pipeline in regards to what it has to do with the school district. The settlement between the city and Nexus is between them only. Green Local Schools will receive no money from the settlement that the city and the Nexus pipeline had with each other. I also want to say that there's been a lot of people coming around talking about what they hear and what they've heard from Nexus and what they've heard from the oppositions, but no one really knows what the pipeline will bring in. And on that advice from that legal counsel and that Cleveland State expert, we have not put any revenue in the forecast for it. It doesn't mean that we're ignoring it, it's because we don't know what it's going to become for us. The last part that we need to know is that Nexus Pipeline is a self-reported tax. This means that Nexus reports to Summit County Fiscal Office what the pipeline is worth. Therefore, it's self-declaring what they will pay for in their bill. Here's an example. As your property bills, they come out to your houses, what has happened is every 3 years, an assessor comes to your home. They don't necessarily go into your home unless you let them. And they look around and they look at what home sales happened around you. They look at the street, they look how close it is to the schools, they look at things like that, and they decide what your house is worth. They appraise it for the next 3 years. Then they go back and they plug in all of the levies from the libraries and the schools and the parks, and they figure out what your bill is, and that's how you get your bill in the mail. So if we did it the way that the pipeline will work, they would come to you and say, well, what do you think your house is worth? And you would tell them what you wanted to tell them because you knew that's how much you were going to have to pay for the bill. So Nexus is the only entity, and not Nexus itself, but pipelines are the only entity where they get to declare how much that is going to be worth on the property, not the other way around. So I just want to go over some of the things that I do know about the pipeline. Obviously, we all know that the construction of the pipeline began this year. With that, if it's finished, the first possible collection for the school district is 2021. So the first time we would see any revenue from the pipeline would be in year 21. Pipelines have an automatic 15% depreciation in value each year until it gets to the mandated minimum of 15%. So 6 years from now, the pipeline will be at its lowest value down to that 15%. Each year they get that 15% depreciation. The initial estimates, if they're valued correctly for the school district, would begin at $850,000 to $1 million, knowing that each year that will depreciate. The other catch to all of this is that if the state funding formula remains the same, we will have a loss of our state foundation money in years 22 and 23. So though the pipeline will already have begun depreciating in 22 and 23, they're going to use the valuation of the first year, and it will look like the property values are worth more in green than they are, so we'll lose state funding on the other side. I'm not saying that they'll lose it equally, that's not how it works, but I'm saying that we will have a loss of state foundation money because of the pipeline as well. There's another pipeline that runs through a very small part of southwest Ohio, and it's called Rover. It's set for completion, and it's being assessed currently for revenue potential. So this is good for us because there are a few years ahead of us with Nexus, and we're going to have a better understanding of how these pipelines will impact our forecast and how it will impact state aid, and before any hits any of our property values and before any of our bills have changed. So this is, I think, probably the best news for us is because for once we're not the guinea pigs of something, and we're actually going to see how it's going to affect. We're all going to be on the same page. By the time we get to the 21 forecast, we're going to know how it's going to work. The last part of our real estate collection is 8%, and it's our property tax allocation. If you remember, about 4 years ago, 2 biennium budgets from the state, they decided to excel the phase-out of the tangible personal property. We lost $1 million that year from our state aid for that part, and now the phase-out has been pushed even further to be a final phase-out in 2020. Like I said, we were collecting over $1 million. At this point, the only collection we have left of that is $78,000, and that's being phased out and will be gone in the next 2 years. So the bulk of this line item is really just what we call the state rollback and the homestead exemption. Everyone in here who has a residential house in green, you get a 10% rollback of your property bill, and the state reimburses us for that on your behalf. We also have the homestead exemption, the 2.5 that's listed up there. That is for senior citizens who have a house here in green. They as well get an additional 2.5% taken off their bill, and the state gives us the money for that. The second main revenue source for us is basically the rest of it almost, and that's our state aid. That's what I was referring to as our state foundation payment. Oh, I went too fast. Sorry. So state aid is based on your student enrollment, on your district income levels, and on your property values. The last two, the district income levels and the property values, are what are made up together to what they call the state share index. And that stays with the district over the 2-year period of the budget. For the lowest wealth districts in the state share of funding can be as high as 90%. For the highest wealth districts, there is a minimum of 5% that you can receive from the state. Green state share for this budget is 37.5%. So an easier way to understand this is, let's just pretend that the state says it costs $100 to effectively educate a student in green. If it costs $100 per student, they'll give us $37.50 per kid, and the rest is up to the green residents to cover. We also have some other line items that come into this line. You can see the second one is the casino revenue. Right now, we're collecting currently approximately $51 per student. If you recall, a couple years ago when this first came out, their original estimate to school districts was $118 per student. So we don't even receive half of what they said, what they thought. Of course, they had to, estimate what they thought that gamblers would do in Ohio and how much people would come to Ohio just to gamble. And it kind of goes back and reinforces what I said about the pipeline. We know we're going to get something, and everything's an estimate right now. So instead of putting that $118 in there 4 years ago, we didn't do that. We waited to see what we were going to get. And that's kind of where, at least where I took the pipeline stance of why it's not in there right now, because it's just such a big unknown for us. We also receive career tech money and economically disadvantaged funds. That 19% of their number is the number of students in green who are on free and reduced lunch. We received money for a graduation bonus. Last year, our graduation rate was over 97%. And we also received special educated weighted funds in this area as well. So all that's left is the 7% of revenue. Keep doing that. This line item is mainly for the TIF settlement payments from the city. Those are the way that the city attracts businesses to come into green is they can give them tax breaks for their bills to have them come here instead of our neighboring cities, which helps everybody. And with the settlement that we had with the city, the money that we would have received from the property tax collection, we received back from the city at a rate of 85%. We also, in the past year, I went through a training and got together with an investment firm to start using some of our money to invest in commercial paper. And in the last 10 months, we've earned over $45,000 in interest income this year. The next one is a Medicaid reimbursement. 2 years ago, Mr. Miller came to me and said, hey, do you want to jump into this Medicaid reimbursement pool? It's basically for students that we have here in the district that are on Medicare or Medicaid. We can bill back the state and receive some reimbursements from the extra services that these students may need. And I think we really weren't sure what we were going to get. I mean, we just kind of said, let's try it. $1 is $1, and Mr. Miller and I are always looking for $1. And so we ended up, in the last 2 years, over $230,000 that we've received back from the state. The last two, we received money from the Air Force to reimburse us for our ROTC instructors. And also our preschool tuition goes in this line item. If parents pay per month, if they break it out, in the total, they'll end up paying $19.35 for the year. If they make the two big payments, one before school starts and one before the holiday break is over, they end up getting that $135 off for the tuition. So the last thing I want to say about revenue, and we'll move on, and if you look at the forecast, if you go online and look at it tomorrow, or you shoot me an email, I'll send you one. The previous 5 years, they show a history of the revenue changing by 4%, but our current revenue annual changes is less than 2% moving forward. The reason that this is there was a one-time settlement with the city for past TIF parcels. There was a reclassification of where catastrophic reimbursements were recorded. And we did have a company in green that made their large delinquency payment. They'd finally caught up in their bill. So it kind of skewed it a little bit and made it look like we have these higher revenue increases than we really do. Next up in the middle section of the forecast, if you take a look at it, are your expenses. Salary and benefits go hand in hand. And then we also have what they call purchase services and supplies and others. With any school district, the majority of its expenses is salaries and benefits. In fiscal year 2018, the combination of these two lines is 84%. Typically, Ohio Department of Education believes districts need to stay within 80 to 85% of these line items to allow adequate funding for the remaining expense categories. With our current staffing levels and conservative projections of health insurance increases, we will exceed this ratio in year 2022, which is the 5th year of this forecast. But I'd like to say, like I've said probably every time I do this, that things change so drastically. We're going to have 2 more biennium budgets from the state by then. More federal grants are becoming available that we always go after. And we're pretty conservative on how we forecast for medical premium increases and holidays. The benefits tab alone is 23% of our budget, and it covers our state retirement employee contributions, our Medicare, our workers' compensation, and our medical, dental, and life insurance for our employees. The district moved to the Stark County Council of Governments in fiscal year 11 for its medical insurance. For the years of 20, 21, and 22, we have forecasted a 10% increase and 1 premium holiday. And I can tell you that in the 14 years history that I have with the COG personally, they've never had a 10% increase. But the 10% is in there because that's what the Council of Governments asked us to enter, because that's always the possibility. That to them, I feel like they feel like kind of that would be the most that they could go in 1 year, and they like us to be conservative that way. This year that we're in now, that we're ending here in a couple weeks, we received a 5.4% increase in the insurance, and we received 2 holidays. The holidays mean that for 2 months out of the 12, we choose our months, and we don't have to pay the bill. And also the employees don't have to pay their contribution as well. And the last part about this is this week, the COG is voting for next fiscal year, which starts July 1st. There's going to be a 6.75% increase, and we're going to receive 3 premium holidays. So in November, if you were here in November and watched, you would have heard me say that I had 10% in 1 holiday estimated for November for 19, which starts July 1st, and now we have 6.75 and 3 holidays. So that savings alone is $1.3 million, a difference. So that's what those do for us when they give those to us. The next 12% of our expenses are what they call purchase services. This takes up the 12%, and it covers property insurance, legal fees, staff development, utilities. It also covers students that are going out of the district for open enrollment, students that leave to attend community schools, students that attend STEM or autistic schools. These students that leave the district are a net loss for the district of over $1 million per year. We do receive about $500,000 of open enrollment money coming in, but the net loss after you take that away is $1 million. That only leaves 4%. 4% is the stuff that we might have some say over. We have, these are for supplies, for classrooms. We do have a House Bill 264 debt payment because we automized the high school HVAC system a couple years back. We have an annual financial audit of my office, and Summit County Fiscal Office has a collection fee for collecting your money to pass along to the school district. We also use this line item for professional memberships and for our fleet insurance. All of these details and more are available on the Ohio Department, like I said, starting tomorrow. If you compare the forecast adopted in November to this one, very little has changed for this school year. Revenue is up 1.1% than what I expected, and our expenses are down 1.3% than what I estimated. With a small increase in revenue and a small decrease in expenses, we should end up approximately with $937,000 more than I had put out in November. It's easier for everyone to look at the bottom line. That's their favorite part. So I always put one in here for that. I will say that the renewal of the 2 existing emergency levies is crucial, and they are estimated inside of this forecast. The district is expected to be in the black through 2021, and there is a small negative amount shown in 2022. But like I said, there's so many things that changed in those last 2 years that this is just a complete estimate. And to give an example, if in one of those last 3 years, if there was just one more holiday, that number would actually be a positive number at this point. There's only one more topic to go over, for me anyway, and that is the proposed safety and security levy. As you can see on the screen, the levy goes to the voters on August 7th, 2018. It is a 5-year levy for 1 mil. 1 mil brings in this district this year $777,653. The cost for a $100,000 home would be $35 a year. The proposed levy is a totally separate fund number and is not part of the 5-year forecast. I can't report the revenue here or any of the expenses here because this levy would be required by law to have a separate fund number. A safety and security levy can only be used for the following: permanent improvements to provide or enhance security, the employment of or contracting for the services of safety personnel and providing mental health services and counseling, and providing training in safety and security practices and responses. Green Local Schools will provide the following with the approval of the 1 mil levy. We will hire 4 additional school resource officers for a total of 5 full-time officers, hire 2 full-time family support specialists, hire 1 full-time early childhood school mental health consultant, and the remaining money each year will be used to purchase equipment and enhancements to classrooms and buildings for the sole purpose of safety and security for our students and staff. And that's all I have.
And just so to continue on with the levy discussion, one of the big questions is what is, as Edie started to talk about, is what is our plan? School resource officers, same sheriff, Summit County Sheriff, one and the same, is probably the biggest piece of the enhancements to our security and safety of our students and staff, with a planned 1 officer in each of our 5 buildings on a full-time basis. What do we get for those? These are specially trained, fully, I want to say fully functional, but fully, help me out, Smitty, full-up sheriffs, we'll just put it that way, that have received additional training in how to deal with, in dealing with students and interacting with students, et cetera. They will interact with the students and staff on a daily basis throughout the entire day, and they'll have the ability to handle all disputes that might come up that you may or may not call a sheriff for, going from somebody running into somebody in the parking lot, 2 cars, for example, or if there's a custody issue, or God forbid something even worse that we've seen in the school safety arena here recently. One of the questions was, why not hire some retired veterans, or why not hire some a different security, maybe a security
Security guard.
card company, I'm sorry, to do that? And do they come at, when they come at a lesser expense? And the answer is yes, they would probably come at a lesser expense, and then you would get a drastically less capable person in terms of handling the situation and making sure that it's handled properly. For the district, as we considered all those things, we thought it in the best benefit to our students, our staff, and our families that we just have a full-time Summit County Sheriff Officer in the buildings to handle everything that might come their way. Some of our infrastructure additions and upgrades, you see we had currently 280 cameras in the district. We're obviously, we're not going to probably say where those cameras are going to be located, but they're definitely going to be upgraded in terms of the number as well as the capabilities that we have to interact with some of our software, our soft goods type things that we're also going to be making improvements upon or adding to in our security plan. We're going to have obviously some building access point, either restrictions or some other types of add-ons to that, as well as lockdown kits in every classroom in the district. Someone was asking, can we say what is in the lockdown kit? We prefer not to be specific in that regard, but I think if you all took a moment and thought about the fact that if at some point in time you just locked yourself in a room for 3 to 4 hours during the day, what would be your needs? And there's a wide variety of needs for a wide variety of people, over 25, 26 people, especially kids at that point in time. So you can probably imagine what would be part of that kit as we go forward with that. Part of a big part of what we're trying to do is not only to provide some physical security, but we're also trying to provide obviously a deterrence with our sheriff presence, as well as their cruiser that would be in full view there at each of the buildings. But we're also trying to provide as much prevention care as we possibly can. We've mentioned, or you've all heard in the news reporting lately, that the third piece to this is the mental health piece, and it's the one that's probably getting the most play because it's the one that's beginning to get the most attention, even though it's probably the smallest piece that they're actually putting resources towards. And I believe that trend is starting to change to where they're trying to get people into the schools that can recognize the at-risk kids, that can recognize the different behavior, that can intervene, beforehand, before it gets out of control and before any kind of danger happens, not only to that student, but God forbid to other students and staff as well. And that's part of the reason that you saw with the child support services, as well as our care team folks that Mr. Miller was advocating for. There's a lot of things that are going into this. It's not like we're not doing safety items right now. It's not like we just decided that, hey, we're going to have to do all this safety stuff. If you take a look at the agenda, you'll also see that there's money being allocated for a new PA system. Later on in the evening, we'll be voting upon that. One of the articles that I read recently in the Wall Street Journal talks about school design and the aging of our buildings, and one of the major problems that they have are the antiquated PA systems that either it's kind of like that whole thing that you used to have in your house, right? Remember that? It used to be really cool where you just push the button and you'd actually talk to somebody, and unless it was about a week old, it worked, and then all of a sudden it didn't work anymore, but you had this thing up there the whole time. And what we're seeing is that as more and more technology comes into this arena, that the antiquated PA systems and phone systems that either A, they don't exist in the classrooms, or B, they're not able to be integrated with the newest technology, is certainly limiting what we can do and how quickly we can get things moving in case of an emergency situation. So you'll see that from Mr. Jackson's permanent improvement part to some of the things that you're seeing that we're doing here as a district on an ongoing thing. There's safety. Every day there are safety concerns. Every day there's ways to how do we improve the safety of our district, how do we improve the safety of our kids, and make sure that when they show up or when they get ready to get on that bus in the morning, that they're not afraid to come to school, that they want to come to school to learn. What I'd like to do now is it's a little bit different break of protocol than what we normally do. We normally wait and ask for questions or things at the end of the meeting. What I'd like to do, since we're talking about this right now, it's fresh in everyone's mind, if you have questions, not just general comments, but if you have questions about what the levy is all about, what it represents, I think it'd be a good time if we just made our way to the podium. And let's get the questions out now while we have our experts in the room. We have Sheriff Barry and Captain Smith that are here from Summit County. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here with us tonight. They've been here at every step, I think at every step of the way, from back in March until tonight. And obviously they've been here for years prior to that and for years to come. So we certainly appreciate your presence here. But does anybody have any questions about the nuts and bolts of the levy? Anything is fair game. Nope. Yeah, we'll have time for the general comments here in probably about 15 minutes as we get through the rest of the agenda. But if there's no questions, obviously Edie, you did a fabulous job then. Then we will move forward. Spoke too soon. You use the hand mic. Oh, thank you, Chuck. Didn't even see you there.
Tony Zeeler, 3883 Goldenwood Way. Could you give us a approximate breakdown of the personnel versus the facilities portion of the levy?
The personnel, Edie, correct me if, oh, go ahead. Since I know you know these numbers, go ahead.
It's
Sounds better coming
the
from you.
personnel is 80% for the first year. So that would be 80% for personnel for these folks that we listed, and then 20% for the upgrades of equipment. Obviously, there would be some increases in years 2 through 5 for the staff for their increases, but that's the first year breakdown is 80-20.
80-20. Tony, did you get that? Okay. Any other questions or anything before we move on? Okay. So we'll move forward. Item number 8, the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the regular board meeting minutes of April 23rd and the special board meeting of May 1st?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff.
Finelli.
I'm sorry. So I didn't. Thank you, Mrs. Finelli, and thank you, Mr. Hurdlick. Mrs. Snowberger.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item 9, the financial report. The superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the financial report and payment of bills as presented by the treasurer. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff. And second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item B, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the 5-year forecast and financial notes for May of 2018 as presented by the treasurer. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Any questions or comments on the forecast? Other
Can we
than
just-
outstanding?
Can we add our comments just to our board accommodations at the
Sure.
end? Would that be, since
Yeah,
we're
it'd be-
running close
yeah.
on time?
Be a little more expeditious. Thank you. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item C, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education accept the following donation from the PTSA to the Green Middle School Library renovation in the amount of $5,000. Do we have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hurdlick. I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the PTSA for such a generous donation. We really appreciate that.
And can I just throw in there, just real quick, 2 of our fabulous middle school PTSA volunteers are here, Carrie
I don't see them
Stevens
anywhere.
and,
You make yourself known.
and Chris Graham, who raised, through the carnival, raised an amount almost equal to this donation. And GMS library is beautiful, but it looks very similar to what it looked like when I went there. So it's going to get a beautiful upgrade. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mr. Herdlick,
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Under new business, the consent calendar note, is items under the consent calendar are considered routine and be enacted under one motion. To be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the board votes, unless a board member requests an item be clarified or even removed from the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Questions or comments?
I'd just like to take a minute to recognize item 5A, Glenna Romine. She's been our transportation supervisor for several years now, and she will be taking another position. And I just want to let her know that how much we appreciate and are grateful. Certainly, the great sign of a leader is it's better when you leave than when you started, and that definitely is the case with Glenna. So I just want to wish her well and thank her for all the effort that she's put into this district over the years.
Thank you for mentioning that. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff,
Yes.
Mr. Herdlick.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item B, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the following resolution. Paraphrasing, it's a resolution providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $825,000 for the purpose of acquiring school buses and related equipment used in transporting pupils per attached. May I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Mr. Miller, Mrs.
I'm
Snowberger,
done.
you want to comment on that?
I'll do it. Actually, we got together with our finance crew. Like Mr. Jackson explained, we were in desperate need of some school buses. And when times were tough, like Mr. Herdlick said, we didn't buy a whole lot of anything, and we kind of got behind on our acquisition of buses. The last couple of times when we purchased 4 or 5 buses, we did it through a lease program. We were able to get somewhere between 3 and 5 buses, but then that would have to last for that 5 years of that lease payment. So I reached out to the finance guys who helped us refinance our House Bill 264 project. And they actually said there were 2 ways that we could maybe do a big group purchase. One is through selling of bonds, and one is actually the lease that we were traditionally doing. They sent this out to 42 different banks, and we actually got a full percentage, just shy of a full percentage lower interest rate than if we had done the leasing. And we put this out over a 10-year period. We were able to get 7 new buses and 2 special needs buses. So in this resolution alone, we'll have 9 new buses, and you'll see later on in the agenda, we're asking for approval to buy 2 more buses outright. So this is going to tremendously help our bus fleet and those poor folks that are always band-aiding those buses together. And the payment per year is actually a couple $1,000s less than our annual lease payment we have right now. We made our last lease payment in September, so it's actually the same lease payment, the same payment. It's put aside as one of those fixed costs that Mr. Jackson talked about in our permanent improvement fund, and we'll be desperately getting 11 new buses for the district.
Thank you, Mrs. Snowberger. Any questions or comments?
What is the total number of our bus fleet currently, roughly?
Approximately 40 regular and 10 special needs.
Okay. And then over the past 5 years, we've, between the 11 here and 4 before?
We got 5. We got
In the lease?
5 regular and 1 special needs, like 8 years ago, and then we got another, Mr. Jackson, 4 or 5 new buses 2 years ago. So.
Okay,
now
so
we're
it's
getting this.
starting to turn that fleet over and getting caught back up again.
Yeah, we were looking at what the recommendations are in that area, and we had quite a ways to go. This definitely is going to help move towards that number. And if you recall, earlier in the year, we had some buses that we made the motion for you guys to approve to allow us to use pieces and parts, so we could, take from some of those skeletons and then patch up some of these other buses.
Thank you.
Mrs. Snooker?
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Herdlick?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item C, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education accept the quote from R.J. Beck Protective Services Incorporated to replace the high school PA system for $44,715 in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 3313.46 to be expended from permanent improvement funds. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I'll just comment, and I know Mrs. Brown's probably one of the happiest people in the rooms because anyone that knows running a school building without a functional PA system is quite a challenge. This PA system will obviously fix that issue, but there's also some safety enhancements that this will allow, some flexibility and some options for the high school. So I know that this is something that's been an issue, and when you have buildings that are 20 years old and technology as fast as it changes and improves, I mean, think of a phone that's 20 years old and try to find parts for that. So with this PA system, I know there's some really excellent features that will be able to be utilized. So thanks for your patience.
And Mr. Miller, correct me if I'm wrong, but this PA system will also be able to tie into potential some security features
Yep.
too.
Yes.
We won't go into detail about that just because of our safety plan, but just it's part of one of the things that we're looking at.
Good point. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item D, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the purchase of the leveled literacy intervention instructional materials from Heinemann at an amount not to exceed $35,000 to be expended from permanent improvement funds. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hurdlick. Questions or comments?
Yeah, just this is curriculum materials utilized by our Title I teachers to deliver systematic interventions for Title I services. The materials include protocols for assessing students, lesson delivery and progress monitoring. Title is a service where students that qualify work in small groups with similar students of similar needs to work on their reading and improve their instructional levels. And this a purchase will allow for the consistent practices among the Title I teachers and then the systematic support for those foundational reading skills, and it's at the lower elementary where this takes place.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item E, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education accept the quote by Rush Bus Centers, Akron, for 2 IC Bus Model CE passenger school buses in the amount of $171,180. This purchase is through the Ohio Schools Council Purchasing Cooperative to be expended from permanent improvement funds. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. This concludes the formal portion of the meeting. We do have a number of people who would like to speak this evening, so without any further ado, Mrs. Leonard. And if you would use the handheld mic that...
Thank you. Connie Leonard, 2159 Prestwick Drive, Uniontown. I've lived in Greene for a long time, and my comments tonight are as much for the community as for the board. In fact, I've been associated with the schools for 40 years. That's a long time. So I've worked as a teacher, an administrator, been on the school board, and I continue to be a facilitator and volunteer with the Developing Leaders of Tomorrow program. So as a senior citizen, I see one of our students, as a senior citizen and not being in the schools on a regular basis, I have some questions about the school safety levy that's coming up, and so I wanted to get some answers, and I decided to go to people who would give me straight answers, that being the school people. And you heard tonight a lot about what I learned as well, and so I'm not going to go over that information, but I will say that, you know, during these 40 years, I have been involved in a lot of school improvement plans. And the first item on those plans was always student safety. And, you know, for many years, it really didn't have to be a focus. It wasn't an issue. And then there was Columbine, and everything changed. And today we know what an issue it is. You know, there's Florida, there was Texas, and I'm so glad and thankful that our board is being responsive. You know, we have parents with concerns, and our people have listened. That's so important. So we had the meeting on March 1st at the high school, and over 300 people attended to express their concerns. And again, our school people listened. And they've decided to put this issue on the ballot to address the things that you've heard about tonight. And this is so important. You know, we want school safety officers in our buildings. We want other assurances that things are going to be made safe for these students. And parents want this to be ready for the next school year, am I right?
Yep.
So that's the reason that we really can't wait till the November date and that election. We have to move forward with it. And so the text, or the line that has been established. You know, most of our parents that are have students in school today were students themselves at the time of Columbine. So they've lived with fear. And our students now live with it even more. So when people commit these horrible acts of violence against others, it's because of their pain. And I'm so pleased to hear that we're going to look at mental health help and assistance for students to address this. Because if we can solve some of those problems, you know, we not only help the students that are suffering, but we prevent so much more that could go wrong and could hurt others. And the service that this levy will provide also was mentioned, a care team. I think Bob mentioned that. And that's going to be a comprehensive plan of bringing together teachers, intervention specialists, psychologists, counselors, the safety officers, and all to surround not only the student, but the family that has needs. And so that's really an important thing. You may have read about the safety levy that many of the Stark County schools are going together with through the Stark County Educational Service Center. And Green has decided not to go in that direction and instead to work through the Summit County Sheriff's Office because it's a better plan for us. It would cost our students more to go with the Stark plan, and our students would get less. So I appreciate that decision. You know, we have excellent schools, and we have safe schools, but we want safer schools. We need to make the equipment upgrades and do all the things that Edie talked about, that Bob talked about. And so I just really think that's important, and I applaud you all for what you're doing. In serving on the school board for 8 years, I learned that Jeff Miller is tight with the pennies. Every time a suggestion came up for making improvements, he would say, is it budget neutral? In other words, is it going to cost us anymore? And that was a critical thing. So this is an administration and a school board that is fiscally responsible. Again, I want to thank you for that, too. So I like to say that we raised Jeff Miller in Green. You know, he was a student teacher, a principal, and now he's our superintendent. So we've done well. He does well by us. So you heard Edie talk about the 5-year forecast, and we know that our financial house is in good order there, and we want these additional assurances for our students, and they come at a cost. There is some false information out in our community about one thing and another, especially regarding the Nexus funds. And again, you know, ask questions from people who know. These are two different pots of money. There's city money and there's school money, and those things are different. So, you know, I don't have children or grandchildren in the schools anymore, and as a senior citizen, I'm more than happy to pay that $35 annually per $100,000 cost of my house if it's going to help keep our children safe. So again, ask your questions of people who will give you straight answers, and you'll get accurate information. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard. Sarah Smith.
Sarah Smith, 181 Deer Valley Drive in Clinton. First of all, I want to say that public speaking is definitely outside my comfort zone, so I'm glad this room is cleared out a little bit. And I would like to thank the school board for listening to the citizens of Greene this past spring, for spending hours listening to people and presenting and taking what people said and presenting the safety levy. I have 2 kids in Greene schools, one in the intermediate school, one in the high school. I am the daughter and daughter-in-law of educators, all 4 of my parents and my in-laws were educators. I would like to speak in favor of the safety levy. I know there are many aspects of this, including the care teams, the lockdown kits, the upgrades to alarms, sensors, all that security stuff. But what I would like to speak specifically to is the importance of having a school resource officer in each building. Last week, there was not just the shooting at Santa Fe High School in Texas. There was a shooting at Dixon High School in Illinois. I am a graduate of Dixon High School. My parents taught at Dixon High School. A student came into the building, shot a weapon. The seniors were practicing for graduation in the gym, and the school resource officer immediately engaged the shooter. He fled from the building, started shooting at the school resource officer, who returned fire, injured the shooter, who, not life-threatening injuries, but that school resource officer was able to avert a crisis. So I think that is what I mainly wanted to stress, is the importance of having that person on campus at all of our buildings. We know that having an officer can deter these things, and it proved true in Dixon, where I grew up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Tammy Daly?
My name's Tammy Daly. I live at 1779 King Drive. I appreciate not having my 3-minute timer here, but I will try and keep under it. I want to thank you just for this whole process. You're listening to your customers. You're listening to the parents. When you started in March, you just had that buzz about the community, that the community felt unsettled. Your staff felt unsettled. And you said, let's just bring everybody together. Let's get the questions, and let's get the people to answer the questions. And you listened to hours and hours and hours of questions. And you heard the parents say, we want more. We want you to do more. And you did. The school district came together with all of their experts, had a big list, sorted through it rather quickly by listening to all of the resources, and came up with a plan that the parents want, the parents need, and we're screaming at the top of our lungs, thank you for listening to us. You did a great job, top-notch professionals, and we all appreciate it. And not only did you do it, but you did it in a reasonable amount of time, that you can get this on an August levy, which takes time because you had to do those 3 readings so quickly to get it out there. And in August, these parents are gonna come out in droves, I know it, because you know what the community wants and you're giving the community what they want. This is gonna pass, and you're gonna have it in place for these kids when they walk in day 1. I thank you. You guys did a great job.
Thank you. Dan Durazio?
Hi, I'm Dan Durazio, 4768 Buell Boulevard, Uniontown. I'm a student at Greene High School, and I'm going to be a senior next year. I would like to thank the board for the actions you are taking to increase this safety in our schools. Thank you for taking matters into your own hands and not waiting for the state and national government to take action. We hear the school tragedies. We hear about school tragedies far too often, but we rarely hear about any changes. No one wants a tragedy to happen at their school, and this levy will be a leap of progress for Greene. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan. Blaze Codispoti?
Good evening. My name is Blaze Codispoti, 1994 Fairway Drive, Uniontown. I've been a resident of Greene for 25 years, and both of my children went through the Green Local School District, and I think it's safe to say that I've always supported the school district over those 25 years. In my view, the school district has three responsibilities. The first and most important is to provide a safe and secure environment for the children to learn. The next is simply to educate the children. And the third is to accomplish both the first and the second with fiscal responsibility. Now, these haven't changed. They've been constant from year to year to year, from decade to decade. And the safety and security of our children is no more important today than it was last year or the year before or 5 years ago. But what troubles me most is this immediate and sudden rush for a levy to address a problem which I'm not sure what the definition of the problem is right now. You have to clearly define the problem. Is the problem that we want to prevent the potential or try to mitigate the potential of mass shootings? Or is it something else? And this is no disrespect to the Sheriff's Department, but if the problem definition is to mitigate the potential for mass shootings, SROs are proven not empirically not to be the answer. They will not be the answer. Texas had 2 armed SROs in that facility. Florida had an armed SRO in that facility. But if it's a perception and an illusion for everyone involved, the parents and the students, I understand that. And yes, the presence of an SRO will provide that perception. So we all of a sudden, when the security has always been there, the need has always been there every year, and we have a rush to a special election, a levy, we're going to pay $21,000 just to put it on a special election, instead of waiting till November, and we seem to have ignored the other sources of funding. The primary source, in March, the U.S. government approved and appropriated $1 billion for school safety and security. $75 million is available through September 30th of this year. I hope that the school district has been working on their application already, or organizing the application to apply for those funds. There's $100 million every year after through 2028, and that's from the federal government. That's already been appropriated for school safety and security. There are 2 bills in the House, Senate, state of Ohio right now. Senate Bill 258, which will provide $34 million for school safety and security. House Bill 318, which will provide $10 more million for safety and security. So we say we need $775,000, and we have these resources out there that are approved grants, and we blew right by those and are going to go right to the levy route. I'm just not, it just doesn't add up for me. I understand there's a need, but in my view, if all else fails, yes, come to the levy. I'll support what's needed for this school system. The risk today in Green is the same as the risk last year and the year before. So this risk has been here, and I'm just curious where the board's priority has been last year, the year before that. School safety should be important enough that it should have its own line item in the budget appropriated every single year. I don't believe it does. I believe it kind of just a little bit comes out of permanent improvement funds. It should have an appropriated line item. It's that important. And I can assure you that if I was a Board of Education member, and at any time, if anybody pointed out gaps in the security policies or protocols or hard security equipment at any facility in this school district, I would have it fixed in 90 days. I would have it fixed in 90 days because I've got a $48,539,371 budget that I could easily carve out 1% to fix a safety and security gap. I wouldn't have to wait for any election. I wouldn't have to wait for any funds. This district is very well funded. It's an above average district, and it's blessed in that way. And you just told us how the 1% revenue increase, a 1% decrease in cost, the funds are there. This year we had a $1.4 million carryover. So, you know, my point is, if we need it, we need it. The kids need to be safe. But let's walk through the progression of proper problem definition, problem solution, finance sources, and then we get down there, and if we need to go to the levy, we go to the levy, and we get it done. There's one quote I'd like to finish on, and this is from a PhD forensic psychologist. He's at the University of Virginia. He has spent his lifetime, 34 years, studying youth violence. He says, decisions about school safety should be based on a rational, factual analysis of the problem, guided by evidence from scientific research. And that's Dr. Dewey Cornell. And he spent his lifetime. Whatever the solutions are we identify, do we want them to be perceptions, feel-good emotions, illusions? That's fine if we do. Do we want them to be effective as empirical evidence tells us they will be, proven? There's the Secret Service and the DOE did a comprehensive analysis and study after Columbine. They called it the Safe School Initiative. I would highly recommend that the board take a look at that and look at their findings. And we were talking earlier, Mark, and the point is that we need a system in place to identify these children who are going down this path of violence for mental health reasons. That's the cause. I mean, we need these other physical, but they're just addressing the symptoms, okay? We put those in place to address the symptoms. The real cause are catching these children before they get to the point where they're going to go get their father's weapon and go to school. And right now, knowing what I know, I would probably have preferred to see that 80% that's going to go to SRO maybe be diverted more to counselors for the kids to start to put in place an intelligence gathering system where we're looking at friends, family, associates, social media, looking for any of these red flags that pop up so that we can catch them early and give them the help that they need. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell, can I comment for just a minute? I guess my question would be how you don't know that we didn't do all those things. We've spent a lot of time working on this levy, and part of it is the mental health aspect. And I understand theater of security. I don't believe this is theater of security. I trust our Summit County sheriffs. And the purpose of the Summit County sheriffs are not just to have a person with a gun in the schools. The purpose of the Summit County Sheriff is to begin for children to build relationships with these officers. They intervene not just on safety issues, they intervene on many, many other issues. So the money that will be spent on them is looking towards some of those mental health issues. There's been a lot of misinformation posted on social media over the last few weeks about this. And a lot of those numbers are out of context. So I think I would just say that some of the things that are mentioned in your comments, the grants and other things, we look at those on a constant basis. But we also have a priority here. And Green has had a history of taking care of its own. and I applaud the citizens of the city of Greene for doing that. And while there may be money available, and Mr. Miller makes that a priority, Mrs. McMahon makes that a priority, and they will continue to do that, the people of the city of Greene have recognized a need. They have communicated a need to us. We have done our due diligence. We have done our research. We have consulted with those who we work with, and that is how we came to this process. So I just wanted to clear that up.
And that's another couple other things I'd like to just respond to some of the grants. You know, $1 billion for the entire United States. That number sounds big, but you know, with 660 public school districts in the state of Ohio alone, it certainly becomes very thin across there. If you remember back in, I believe it was 08 and 09, during the when the housing bubble burst, what was the one thing that the federal government did? It stepped in and it provided some additional funding, and it was one of those things that in 2 years suddenly they decided we weren't going to do that funding anymore. Another part with the federal government is that we're going to put, 100,000 new policemen on the streets after 9/11, and everybody couldn't believe why the cities and municipalities weren't putting the sheriffs and law enforcement out on the street. Well, just come to find out that it was a finite amount of grant, and that in a certain number of years it was going to have to be revoted upon, and more than likely wasn't going to be approved. So what we've felt like, and what we see throughout the state of Ohio as well as the federal government, is that they say a lot of things at the point of sale, so to speak, and certainly as that dies down, it seems like the budget people seem to divert some of those funds, one way or the other. Not that they will, not that I know that they will or not. I wish it was as easy as just to look into a data bank and red flag people to say, okay, this young man is going to come into a Jackson Middle School today and he's going to bring a weapon. Or this young man is going to come into Houston, Texas, Santa Fe High School and take his dad's shotgun and his revolver and come in to this art class. It's certainly not that simple. And if it was, obviously, I think we have people that are wise enough and smart enough across the country that they would come up with that. If you can come up with that, that would be great. I think Captain Smith, you had a couple comments. Did you want to make a couple comments on that? And while he's making his way up, your points are well taken, Mr. Conisbody, and certainly I would say that we have taken the time to go through this and look at it. There may not be every data point possible that you would make some grand business decision on, or a business plan, and sometimes data's a good guidance, but it's certainly not the only thing that you can use in order to make your plans going forward. Captain Smith.
So, Doug Smith, I'm a captain with the Sheriff's Office, and for some of you in this room that don't know me, my background is doing the active shooter, and what the cause is, and realistic causes, and I agree with you 100%, it's a mental health issue, right? But what's beautiful about the school resource officer, it gives us the opportunity to get those students in crisis into social services or some sort of medical treatment that they need. Yes, we look at this. I can go back to 1764 to be the first school shooting in the United States, 1764. We monitor this. We look at it. That's one of 2 books just dedicated to active shooter research that I've done. I take this to heart. Every student in Greene, from the time I was a school resource officer here to the sheriff's office as a patrol commander, as a SWAT commander, and so on. I take this to heart. I research it. You bring up the Safe School Initiative done by the Secret Service and Board of Education. We started doing that in 2002. Teachers in Greene have been through that program. We watch what we do. We research. I was reading an article from the Chicago Tribune, Dixon High School, which led me to another study that was done with Carleton University in Canada. And the funny thing is, if you don't know, Sir Robert Peel is considered the father of modern policing. This study was done at the Peel school system. Here's a couple things they found out. Students were less fearful in school because of the SRO. Learning outcomes improved because of that. bullying reduced, property damage reduced, less utilization of police resources on the street, help from social services and health care more likely. It is just not a gun. It is someone able to determine kids that are in crisis and give them the help they need. Now, there's been questions asked, what does a school resource officer do in the summer? Vacation. We don't want them to go during the school year. Training. Safety City. Address verifications. Getting ready for the safety and security of the school the next year. So there's so many things that these folks do for the school. During the school year, engaging with those students, verifying addresses, going and getting that kid. It's time to get out of bed and go to school. So we will do those things. Yes, safety and security come at a cost, always. And we'd be foolhardy if we thought differently. And I will be here after the meeting to answer or address any questions you may have regarding the Sheriff's Office. I thank this board, Wendell Jackson, Julie, Mr. Miller, of all the help they've given me and the guidance that we've done for the schools and allowing us to be part of it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Captain Smith.
Mr. Codispoti, he said something about why are we just working on it now? We have redone all of the entrances, Wendell, and I worked on some of that with Wendell, all of the entrances to all of the buildings to make them safer and we've done it for several years now. And most of them are, I believe all of them are done now. And that was a great expense to the school district. And also, we work on grants all the time. We have special grant people. That's what they do. And some grants we get, and some grants we don't get. But they all take time. Some take a lot of time. And what the parents have said to us, these 320 parents that came to us, they don't want to wait. They want us to do something now. That's why we thought to do this, to put this levy on. And many parents have come up to me and said they feel so much safer with a resource officer in each building. They don't want just one that goes from building to building to building. They want a resource officer in every single building. So that's why we did this. We tried to listen to the parents and what they want, and for them to feel safe, and for us to feel safe, for their kids to feel safe. That's why we did it. It's not something that we just hurried into. I mean, we've been thinking of safety for years and years for these children.
And I just wanted to make a point that as security, just like you said, security is just as important this year as it was last year, as it was the year before, as it was the year before that. That hasn't changed. The security of our staff and our students has always been a top priority of this administration and this district. What has changed is the landscape and the way that we now have to address security. I would love to think that I wouldn't have to think about my daughter being shot at the high school today. But unfortunately, that's something that we have to think about every day, and our kids have to think about that every day. So that is what has changed, not that security hasn't been a top priority in this district forever. It has, and it always will be. It's just like I said, the landscape of this country, unfortunately, has gone down this road that has made us have to adjust to what we need to do. And listening to our parents and our community and the fear that you hear when you talk to parents and even our kids, my daughter's friends that come over, they never had to talk about worrying about a shooter coming into their buildings. They do that now, and they discuss that now. That's adding more stress to our kids too. So, and we've heard our federal government and our state government for years tell us they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and I'm still waiting for a lot of that stuff to happen. As we are here in Greene, we need to take care of Greene and what we need to do based upon what our community believes in and what we believe in and what we talk about for months and years as developing these plans. This isn't something that just popped into our head yesterday. This is something that's an ongoing process, and it may look different again next year. It may look different the following year. We don't know. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in today. But as we discussed this, obviously we felt this was the best plan to move forward quickly, to get this, if I wanted to wait till November, God forbid we had a shooting in September, we would have this room full of people saying, why in the hell did you wait? So I feel very confident and very proud of what we're doing, and I will continue to support anything that our community wants to protect our kids and our staff. Thanks.
It was mentioned that earlier that SROs somehow don't make a difference. There's no empirical evidence. Well, we know, based on what Sarah Smith talked about, that in Dixon, Illinois, at Dixon High School, one SRO stopped in what would have been a huge tragedy at that high school. Santa Fe High School, it's true, 10 students died there, but had 2 officers not engaged the shooter there would have been many more casualties at that high school. You know where an SRO didn't make a difference? That's at Sandy Hook Elementary, when you had 20 kindergartners and first graders murdered in cold blood, because there wasn't an SRO there. Our job, probably our most important job here, is to provide as safe an environment for our students as possible. And I'll never apologize for putting on and voting for a levy that can make our schools safer and more secure. That's it.
Thank you. Well said, Dave. Jennifer Dewar?
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Durr, and this is Jared, my husband. We have been residents of Green for the last 16 years. We were at the March 1st meeting on school safety that was hosted by Green Schools and paneled by many of the leading experts in the safety field. We would like to first publicly thank you for taking your time to listen to our concerns, our questions, and assemble those with so many credentials and experiences that we could never have possibly had given their field of study. We are thankful that you acted expediently on what was and what is so important to our community, that you researched and involved the experts and then came up with a plan to better protect our most vulnerable community members. We recognize that all but one of our schools was built before shootings became common occurrences in this country, and realize that many of the designs may not be in the line with best safety practices today. I have witnessed firsthand the adjustments that have been made within our schools over the years, as horrific and deadly school shootings have taken place throughout this country. As a school board and as a school system, you have made many changes to better protect our children by learning from the tragedies in other communities. We see now that there is still much to be done, while we continue to learn from other schools where they lose their children. To be honest, a $35 a year fee for every 100,000 seems amazingly small for what you're going to do. We are grateful for your forethought when it comes to prevention by adding the addition of mental health professionals at the elementary level, as well as 2 elementary age care teams. The addition of 4 resource officers who are trained in so many facets to assist families in crisis, as well as serve as a protective barrier in our schools, is a requirement. How you will be able to secure the hard structures of our schools that were designed for aesthetics and not with safety in mind, with their beautiful glass classrooms, as well as our glass hallways with only $140,000 remaining, is a true financial feat. Time is of the essence. There are structural changes to be made and personnel to be trained. We do not believe for a second that this tragedy could not happen here in our beautiful community. And we thank you for making these changes before the beginning of next school year. We ask one question in our family when we are making major decisions. What is the worst case scenario, and can we live with it? I ask my children this every time they're going to make something major. In this case, the answer is we cannot live with the outcome unless we did everything that we could to prevent it as a community. Thank you so much for your diligence.
Thank you, Jennifer. Andrea Herr.
Hello, I'm Andrea Hurt. This is a tough act to follow. Oh my gosh. I have children in the schools, and I have one that graduated in 2013. And I think it was 2011, there was a major scare here, and all of the students got taken to the football arena, and it was frightening. But back then, at that time, the way it was handled, I applauded you guys then. So I know that safety has always been at the forefront, and I think that it like upsets me, I guess, to think that people don't think that you think that. I'm not even making sense. Because it's just, it's in our head so much right now because of what happened in Jackson. It's so close to home. And naively, I know I do, I think a lot of people just think, oh, it's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen to us. And then when it did, right down the street, and I mean, Jeff, your wife works there, and I know other people who work there, and to hear about it, I mean, the next day I had put my kids on the bus, and I just prayed, like, please, God, protect my babies. What's happening? So I, too, applaud you guys, and thank you for doing all this. And I know your reasons for, you know, wanting to do it quickly. I'm not going to rehash what everybody else has said and what you guys have said. I did want to touch just on some statistics that I saw. I grew up, my brother was bipolar. He ultimately committed suicide, and I have felt that there could have been different outcomes with that, and not that I'm glad he committed suicide, but I'm glad that he didn't harm other people. So I do take mental illness into account with a lot of things, and I do know that just this year alone, in 2018, we've had 22 school shootings so far, and that's like, we're like 20 weeks into the year, so that's almost like one school shooting a week. I do know the common denominator with the people who, the kids that are doing the shootings, is that they are, they didn't feel accepted, they're kind of loners, they're kind of just miserable in life, they maybe don't have the best home life, and our schools, our school board, knowing that and getting this outside care teams and the elementary mental health specialists is so proactive and important, and everybody has been saying it, get it while they're younger before they get too miserable and they just don't care anymore. Let's get them while we can help them. So thank you for that. There was one other thing. I had all my notes, and then everybody was talking, and it's all the same stuff. There was something. I felt like I had something good, but I don't know that I did. I guess all I just really wanted to say is thank you. Again, kind of what that last lady said, it's such a small amount. $35 per $100,000 a year, that's like the most minuscule amount. And our kids are going to grow up to go out into the community, and hopefully they're going to be productive members of society. And that involves everybody. So whether you have kids or you don't, or your kids already went through school and they, you know, you feel like you're done, we still as a community have a responsibility to keep our kids going and, you know, make Green even better than it is. So I'm going to be done now. Thank you. I'm a bulldog. I bleed orange and black. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Joe Susick?
My name is Joe Susick, 2706 Graybill. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the proposed safety levy, and I'll make it quick. I'm a 42-year resident of Green. My family's been here since 1954. I've seen the city change several times over, so the city's future has always been a concern of mine and a matter of importance. This being said, I'm astonished that a levy for the safety of our children is being questioned when it comes at a cost equivalent to a few delivered pizzas. Furthermore, I'm a teacher for Revere Local Schools and a father of 2, so I do know the importance of safety and how preventative measures are implemented. There's not a day that goes by that I don't go into work and I ask myself, is this the day that some random 16-year-old is going to dictate my student's future, my family's future, or my future? So yes, any extra measures, whether it's for perception or not, is going to make me feel better. It's going to be welcomed. And you got to remember that security is not only life or death, but it's all security: physical security, mental security, and most recently, unfortunately, sexual security. And deterrence is deterrence. And lastly, I am a home and land owner in Greene. Safe schools are appealing schools. Appealing schools attract residents and drive up property value. We have enough in our city threatening the worth of our homes. We surely do not need our schools to follow suit. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you all for your comments. We certainly appreciate all of that. Captain Smith, thank you for volunteering to stay around to answer any questions as well. We'll finish up with board comments. Mrs. Stoyanov?
Sure. So I'll just follow up on just a few things. First of all, thank you to Mrs. Snowberger for the 5-year forecast. Just a reminder that when we passed the new money levy in 2011, that levy was predicted to take us through 2017, 5 years. 2060, actually, 5 years. So here we are sitting in 2018 and looking at a forecast out, till 2021 where we're in the black. So I think as far as fiscal responsibility and being fiscally conservative, I can go to bed tonight feeling kind of okay about that. I think we are. I also think that in that time period, we've also been able to add a lot of programs for students back from when we were having fiscal issues prior to the passage of the new money levy. I think we're running a great school system. I'm seeing kids graduating. Denton Cohen has joined us, one of our national merit finalists. And so I'm proud of what we're doing. I want to touch on something a little really specific that I alluded to earlier, and everybody's talked about it. It is this mental health aspect. We need to be starting with the younger children and talking to them. And first thing that we need to be talking to them about is that struggles in the area of mental health are okay. And that, we all from time to time, feel the blues. We all from time to time have struggles. They may have struggles that are more significant than other people's. But we need to begin to normalize that for young children so that they can find their place, so they don't feel isolated, because that is the common denominator that we see after the fact. I don't want us to be one of those school districts that after something happens, we're commenting, well, we kind of did think maybe something wasn't quite right. We need to have the resources in place to help that child, and we need to have those resources in place from a young age. The key in my mind on this levy is the idea of prevention, and not just the prevention of we're locking doors and we're buzzing and we're doing these things, but preventing a student from getting to the place where they feel that they need to commit these acts. Our care teams are very important. That's going to be a new term that you're going to hear a lot, but that is maybe a term, wraparound services, if some of you are familiar with that term. So we're going to need to be able to bring in things. I can tell you I graduated from Greene High School, many of you know that, in 1994, and it's not easy if you're coming from a family that can't lay down the $100 bills for a lot of things. And so we have students that are coming from all kinds of economic backgrounds, and there's a lot of pressure, I guess is what I would say, and sometimes that pressure turns into anger. And sometimes there's things that are missing, essential things that are missing for kids. Some of you may or may not know this, but we had a community member who donated a washer and dryer to the middle school because we had kids who were coming in with the need to have clean clothes. And that's here in the city of Greene. So we have needs. We're going to be able to prepare for those and do prevention. The other thing that I'll say, just quickly wrapping up, is I appreciate what Mrs. Leonard had to say. You're looking at 7 of us that at any time of day or night, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, would be happy to answer your questions. So if you aren't sure about information, please don't just post information. Please don't share information with your neighbors that is not accurate. Support that, but the misinformation does damage to our ability to educate our kids. And so I would just ask that, we are here to answer your questions, and we're happy to do that. So given that, I'd like to say a congratulations to the class of 2018 who will be crossing the stage next Thursday. I'm looking forward to handing out some diplomas to students who I've seen from this high that will now cross that stage and on to what is next. And with that, I will close and hand it off to whomever is next.
Ms. Finelli?
Well, I wanted to thank everyone who had the nerve to get up here and talk, because I know sometimes it's frightening. But thank you, and thanks for all of the support. And thanks also to Wendell. I know about the permanent improvement stuff, and thank you very much for that, Wendell. And also to Edie. Thanks, Edie, for the forecast. Also, I just wanted to say good luck to our Destination Imagination team as they head to the University of Tennessee. I think tomorrow, to compete in the global competition this week. And also congratulations to the 160-member strong Green Intermediate School Band and the 4th grade recorder band, who both had outstanding performances last week. Wonderful to see our younger students gaining a love for music at this young age. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Mr. Herdlick?
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I just wanted to follow up with what Katie was saying. Edie, obviously another good forecast. A lot of things go into that, a lot of hard work between our staff all the way up to our administration to make that forecast come to fruition, with everyone working together to make that come out the way it does. And I appreciate everyone's hard work for that. Another part with concerning the levy, the part that I'm very proud of is with the care teams and the counselors. There's also a parent project that's starting here in Greene this past couple months ago that's helping with troubled kids and their parents that are at their wits' end. So it's been a very fact-based. It started out West Coast and it's moving this way. With the statistics are phenomenal on how this program has really corrected some bad behavior in kids, and whether it's drug-related or truancy. So I think there's just a lot of things that we are moving towards in Greene to help that mental health side. When you listen to all these shootings, unfortunately, 80 or 90% of the conversation's all about, arming teachers, SROs, metal detectors. I mean, those are all wonderful things, but it's all the defensive piece. And you hear so little conversation about the actual cause and root of the problem. So I'm very pleased to be able to implement more things like that here in Greene to address the actual issues that we are having, and especially when we can start interacting. Obviously, you can't stop everything. Anything can happen at any time. We've seen that every day. But if you can put your best foot forward and start doing the correct things and try to get to the root of the problem rather than trying to defend against it. And so I'm very proud of the decisions that everyone's made to start addressing those issues in this district as we move forward. So I just wanted to kind of comment with that to finish up that part. Kind of get onto a little happier notes. There are a few happy things going on in the Senior Awards is tomorrow night at the high school auditorium. That's always a great night for our seniors, where all our community members come together. I don't even know the total dollar amount of scholarships that go out that night, but there may be, I don't even want to give a number, but I know the foundation gives out $20,000 by itself. But there's many companies and organizations that are there to give our well-deserved seniors scholarships to move forward into their next journey. So that's a great night for our seniors. Also, our Developing Leaders of Tomorrow banquet is this Thursday. It's another Greene Schools Foundation partnership with ComDoc event that deals with 10 juniors each year that really develops leadership in these kids. Daniel here is one of our members this year. And it's just a very positive program that you see these kids start out at the beginning where you feel they have those leadership qualities, but they just haven't demonstrated them yet or haven't been guided to show how to bring out those qualities. And this program, every year when I'm talking to parents and just seeing the difference in the kids from the beginning of the program to the end of the program is just a phenomenal program. So I appreciate the Green Schools Foundation and ComDoc putting on that program. And that banquet will be Thursday night at Prestwick, which the kids get to put their project to task in front of their parents this time, and their educators that actually nominated them. So it'll be a nice event for that. Yeah, graduation next Thursday. Congratulations to all of our graduating seniors. I'm hoping the list that we approved last month is still the same amount of kids that we have next week. So hopefully that all goes well. Also, the fall physicals for anyone with fall sports, that will be at the high school next Wednesday. It's $20. All the physical forms you can get off our athletic website. So that's just a nice one-stop shop to get your physical out of the way here at the end of the school year before you run out of time for next year. So that's going on there. 8th grade promotion is Thursday, May 31st. So Cindy Brown is now gone, but she'll get a whole new group of 8th graders moving up to be freshmen. So good luck to them. One last thing, last week, the Green Primary School had their reading celebration where the kids got to have a nice fun day of running and jumping and dancing and snow cone machines to celebrate their over 3 million minutes of reading throughout the year. So that's just, I had to read that number like 4 times. 3 million minutes. I know there's quite a few kids there, but that's a lot of reading. So congratulations to those kids too. And everyone have a great summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Just one thing on the physicals. I think one physical, that's good for the year. So if you're going to do even a spring sport next year, you can get that done as well. So
thank you.
Mr. Cohn.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you to all who spoke today. Really appreciate you coming out. We hear you, and we're going to continue to hear you. And we appreciate the overwhelming support that we heard here tonight. I want to thank Mr. Jackson for his stewardship of our physical facilities. Not an easy job, but does a great job in his stewardship. Mrs. Snowberger, Mr. Miller, as usual, phenomenal forecast. Incredible stewardship of our budget. I'm convinced this is the best administrative team, in Ohio, if not the Midwest, if not the United States. And it's just a pleasure to work with these folks. Let's see. I think I'll change gears here and talk a little bit about the Mega Marathon. 193 students got to go to Sluggers and Putters. I can't even remember. That was last week, I think. Was it last week? Yeah. It's all a blur right now. But 193 students from Green Intermediate got to go, sponsored by the Green Schools Foundation. In order to qualify, they had to do a combination of 26 miles walking and running, 2,600 math facts, and 2,600 pages read. I did a lot of those miles walking with my 5th grader, complaining the whole time, but she did it because she wanted to go to Sluggers and Putters. So, and it was a great outing for the kids. The spring concerts, choir concerts, have all wrapped up. In fact, the 4th and 5th grade choir concert took place while this meeting was going on. And so that's all done. Congratulations to the Green Local Schools Choral Department, because they just continue to surpass expectations year after year. Speaking of choir and singing, we had a tremendous 2 ensemble shows for the Green High School that took place about 2 weeks ago. If you had a chance to see the shows, you'd know just what kind of talent we have in this school, and how entertaining and really impressive the kids are. And let's see, finally, I want to congratulate the class of 2018. Mr. Campbell and I both have graduating seniors, and we will miss them dearly. And I think I can speak for Mr. Campbell and say every class is special, but the class of 2018 is a truly remarkable class, and they will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Not really a whole lot left to say. I think everyone has hit on a number of very important topics. Obviously, the mental health side has a bit of a different meaning to me and my family, and that there's always ways to do things better. There's always ways to reach out just a little deeper, and there's always ways to make Green even better than what it is today. And I appreciate the effort of everyone in this room and in this community to do that. One of the things that I really want to that I've noticed tonight especially is regardless of which side of the ledger you're on, for, against, neutral, comments, parents, grandparents, seniors in the community, I just want to thank everyone who spoke this evening, everyone in the audience, for their respectful manner, the way in which they conducted themselves. Hopefully everyone feels comfortable coming to our meetings and being able to express themselves freely without worrying about the ire of the crowd or anyone else. And I certainly respect everyone's opinions. And I'm glad that everyone felt comfortable enough to get up and express those. So just a huge thanks to everyone who spoke. Congratulations to the class of 2018. I know at least 2 that are on that list that are still on that list, so that's a good thing. And that'll be a great celebration. Hope everyone is safe, enjoys the Memorial Day weekend, start of the summer, long time coming, and hopefully you have a great summer, and we'll see you in June. Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoner.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Mrs. Snowberger.
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Herdlick?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.